Hey everyone, it's Bubbles and welcome back to my channel. Also welcome if you are new. So today's video is not going to be a build, it's going to be a little different. I know I took a break and did like other gameplay things on the channel for a bit, but now I want to go back to, you know, Sims related content, and I've also been wanting to put out a extensive building tutorial for both like exterior building and interior building tips. So that's what I'm doing today. This video will be the first part, so this will be only exterior things, and then I'll have another video coming out probably next week that is specifically interior building tips. So I think this one will be longer just because I have more, you know, things to talk about, but either way. So to start out with building, I'm just on, you know, a blank lot, and so the first thing I always do for my builds is I start by putting my cheat codes in. So to open the cheat window box, I use ctrl+shift+c, and it'll pop up this little, you know, search bar thingy up at the top. And then I put in 4 cheat codes. I put in bb.moveobjects. I put in bb.ignoregameplayunlocksentitlement, which is a long one. And then for those two, they'll give you a confirmation if they got turned on correctly. So yeah, and then the other two I put in are for debug menus. So this third one is bb.showhiddenobjects, and then bb.showliveeditobjects. I do the show hidden objects one first because I find that if I try to do the fourth one before that one, it doesn't open all the debug menus correctly. So basically what each of these do is like move objects helps you put objects down with more precision, and I'll talk a little bit more about what it does in the interior building tips video, but for right now it basically means you can move objects off of them snapping to the grid. The ignore gameplay unlocks one is more for interior building as well, but it just unlocks like career items, like any item you can unlock in the game, and unlocks them for you. And then the show hidden objects is all debug stuff that didn't come in the update for like live edit. The live edit is like objects you see in the world, like these plants and like some objects that are just in the world that you can't have access to without that cheat. So there's actually a lot of good stuff in there that I use sometimes. Just a note for the debug items, on my gallery page I did upload a bunch of rooms that have debug items that I sorted out. So like I found public venue items that I put in a room, and then like cars, there's some landscaping things, and then here's some water clutter thing. I kind of just organized it the way my brain works, but the best ones are like miscellaneous clutter that you can find in the debug, and also kitchen and food related clutter. So there's also holiday decor, but you can find all these rooms on my gallery already if you don't want to, you know, scroll through like the debug menu, just because if you have all packs, it's like over 1,000 items, so it's a lot to scroll through. But yeah, there you go. So after you've put in those cheat codes, you can close the cheat box window by using ctrl+shift+c again. If you want to use money cheats, you can put in like the mother loan cheat in build mode. That gives you like 50,000 bucks. And then there's the other one, which is the money cheat, where you just type in money and then space how much money you want to have in your household. I think that one you can only use when you're in live mode. I'm not sure. Either way, you can max out your Sims cash load up to like, what is it, 1 billion or something? But since this is my build tester, I always have her money maxed out. So for building, I recommend using the Sims 3 camera, which you can find in the settings menu. So basically you want to go to the menu, game options, and then you want to go down to game camera, and I always have Sims 3 camera checked. It's easier to zoom in and like move the camera up and down to get like closer up views of things, so I recommend that. So with the Sims 3 camera, the buttons I use on my mouse is the right mouse button scrolls the screen like this, and then if you click down on the middle mouse button, it'll allow you to rotate the screen, which is what I use. And then if you don't want to use this to move around, I use arrow keys since I play left-handed, but the WASD keys work just the same, so yeah. Another hotkey I use is I like to put the grid on and off. So to do that, you just press the G key and it'll remove it for you. I remove it when I'm doing like interiors because the grid gets in my way, but I use the grid for like building the shell. And then if I'm going to place an object, notice how it does snap on the grid, but if I use the Alt key, I can slide it around really smoothly. And then to place it, you obviously use the left mouse button, and then to rotate it, you can spin it around like this. If you hold down your Alt key, you can spin it like 360 degrees, which is what I use. If you want to place multiples of this item, I use the Shift key, and you can replace or like place it multiple times. The Delete key obviously deletes them. And then if I have multiple floors on a build, I use page up to go up the floors and page down to go down the floors. And then if I want to like pull the walls down, I use the end key, like just above the arrow keys. So the end key will put it so it's just the exterior walls you can see. And then if you do it again, it's just the floor. It does the same thing as this button up here. But I find that using the key is easier since it does it, you know, in order. But there you go. So for terrain tools, what I like to do is I typically use the round brushes, and I put the softness like almost all the way over to the right. That way it just smooths out the edges of terrain paint. Because if I used it, you know, all the way, so it was like that, it's like not very blended. But if I do all the way, it kind of makes it so you can blend edges easier. And then the way I get the effect for my terrain paints, I layer them quite a bit if I want to, or like stone paths. Sometimes I like to use this one as like the first layer, and then I'll use something like this to kind of put some detail in it. That way it's not just, you know, one terrain paint. And then the eraser works just the same way. You can use this slider to soften it or whatever if you want to fix an edge, or if you just want to erase it completely. So if you want to manipulate terrain, however, this one I haven't used a whole bunch just because it is a little clunky in here, so I don't like to use it very much, and it also doesn't really match with the surrounding areas since most of the Sims worlds don't have like hill kind of shapes in their terrain, but if you do, the easiest way I found if I do want to use these tools is I make sure that the softness is all the way over here to the right and the speed is all the way to the left, and that basically means it'll raise it really slowly. That way if you want to do like gradual, you can manipulate it better. And then if you do like do it a little too harsh or whatever, smoothing it out with the same settings also helps. A quick tip I have for landscaping is if I'm, you know, pretend I'm done with a house, but if I'm done with a house or I have, you know, a start of a house, I like to look at what other plants are being used in the world and I copy those trees down. So for Willow Creek, I typically use this tree since it matches with some of the other trees like this one over here. I also tend to use like this one and this one and this one. These are the main ones I use. Sometimes I mix up what trees I use depending on the house type. So those trees I just had up, I typically use them for suburban houses. If I want to do like a more fancier house, I use these and I line them up against the house. And then just some other landscaping tips, I tend to use like the hedges to line the house up. If I'm going for a suburban house, I use more like grown landscaping, if you will. So I use these a lot to frame up like flower patches. I use this quite a bit. Just stuff like that if I want a more like messier or more colorful landscaping. If I'm doing like a modern home where I want the landscaping to be super neat, I typically use these because they're nice and clean. And then sometimes I use this bush or floor plant, I don't know what you call it. Sometimes I use that and I just tone it down more. And then for messier landscaping, I just use like everything. If I want to use fencing on a house, I don't really like framing up a whole house with the fencing like this. I don't like doing this because I think it looks too square and it just, you know, it just looks meh. So sometimes I will cut in, like I'll draw out where I want the fence to go and then I'll cut in different parts and delete them so that it gives it more shape, and then I'll put like a tree here or, you know, things like that. So one thing I noticed while using fences and, you know, making mistakes, I actually found that you can kind of manipulate the fences. There's only a few fences this will work with, for example this one, but notice how when you draw it longer it'll section it off to the different parts. Say you don't want this to be here, you can just delete it and draw it back and it'll draw it like seamless. So I can do it the same way here, and that way it's just like one solid thing. I noticed that and I was like, oh, that's a thing. So I don't know exactly which ones it'll work on. I know that if it's something like these where it's already continuous, it won't do anything for those, but just try it out what fences you want to use and use that trick because it works with me every time. So yeah. A few other tricks I have for building walls in rooms. Say I have a box and I overdrew one of the walls. One of the hotkeys I use is I drag back over whatever wall I want to delete while pressing Control, and it'll delete it for me rather than using the sledgehammer. So I use this a lot if I want to like cut a part in. I kind of do like that. This works with fences, this works with half walls, etc. And then a quick thing for basements, if you use the basement tool and you want to draw a basement down and say you want to actually see the basement from the ground floor, like if you're doing an underground house and you want it to be like open, you can click where you put the basement and click this yellow solid line around it, and then you can remove the ceiling and then you can see in. So for windows and doors, they had an update where you can use the Alt key to move the doors and windows like seamlessly and smoothly like you can with objects. So now you don't have to, clip it onto one of the tiles. This is especially useful if you have a door that only sits between two tiles, because I know before this update, these doors were so annoying where they would only snap in between two of them and you couldn't put them like this. Like you couldn't put it in between three. Or now you can move it wherever you want. The same works for windows. I can like slide it all over the wall. It's pretty cool. I have even noticed that they got rid of the thing that if you overlapped windows, it would like glitch them out, but now you can overlap them if you want to create some kind of look with your windows, and that way like the glass doesn't glitch out. Obviously if it moves you can see it like overlaying, but it's not the glitch like before. Like before I couldn't even overlay the frames, but now I can. So if you want to do that, you can do that. So say you want to use a door that's made for the medium wall height, but you're building a house that has the short wall height. What you can do, if you have move objects on, this will only work with that, but if you have it selected on medium wall height and you put the door you want there down, so like this one, it just goes just above the short wall height, but if you place it while it's on medium height and then you move it down to short height, you can still use it, and yes, it is usable. For like really tall doors that go almost all the way to the top, it doesn't look right because it'll cut through the floor, but you can get away with it if you have, say, like a balcony, a roofed balcony, and so the floor above the door isn't actually in a room. It'll work. So one of the things I like to do for opening up an area that can look down onto the first floor if you're using stairs is I like to do this with fences, but you can basically draw a room around the stairs however you want, so long as it's still keeping whatever it already has open, and then it'll close it off as a room. So then you just use the sledgehammer tool and you can delete the floor so you can see down onto the first floor. When you do this, you are drawing the fence over the stair landing part, but it won't glitch out so long as you're using move objects. You can do this with short wall heights like this, but if you are doing it so you close the room off, I suggest using a fence to do this part here, because if you do try to use the short wall or even a normal wall, you can do the same thing with normal walls, it'll delete it. So when you're doing the landing part, use a fence. So say you want to use that same landing trick for the stairs, but you also have like a piece of the roof that's sticking into the room where you want the landing. As soon as you finish the room with the fences, it'll cut in part of the roof. I don't know if this is a glitch, but this has been around for like ever. So the only way to get around this is to either make it so your roofing doesn't cut into the walls as much as possible, but if it's like a roof piece like the octagonal one that like you can't ever get it to not cut into the room, I found that if you try to do your floor plan so that it's enclosed in a room by itself, like the parts that stick in, and you have the landing, it'll work that way. So now moving to roofing tricks. I know roofing in this game is like the most finicky and difficult thing to get around, especially with the more uniquely shaped builds that you can do, but these are the tricks I use to get my builds to work, and also so that if you're, playing in there, you don't have roof pieces cutting into the walls, because I know it can like obstruct gameplay view. So this is all what I do. So before I go into the kind of tricks and ways I manipulate roofs, I first want to show you guys the hotkeys and different things I use to manipulate roofs. So with these arrows, these are obviously how you get your different sizes for your roofs, both this way and this way, and also there's one for the top. If you're adjusting the height of it, you can press down your Alt key and you can adjust it smoother. This does not work with these because they have to snap to the grid. And then for these other arrows, these are what adjust like the eaves. So if you only want one side to go in, you can press down your shift key and move in, so it'll move like this side, but it won't move this side. And so you do that with whatever side you want. Like if I want this side to be in but not that one, that's kind of what I do. And then one of the other tools is this one. This ball lets you kind of adjust the shape of the roof, and so to do it in a more detailed way, I use Shift+C, and it'll unlock more of these so you can manipulate it on certain parts. So this top one, I'll do the very peak part if it's this roof, and I'll do it like the top part for any of the roof things. And then this middle one, I'll do the middle one. And then the bottom one, I'll almost like nothing happens, but if you look, the edges, you can adjust where they point at. But that's what I use to manipulate their roofing shapes and sizes. So one of the first things I do if I want to have like a 2-story house and I don't want to just have the peaked roof here, I want to have a second floor, first I draw my first floor, and then the second floor I draw it smaller. This is the only way to get this kind of trick to work, but you draw at least a tile smaller on each side versus the first floor. And so then you want to grab a peaked roof and adjust it to the size of the second floor. And then what I do is I pull both sides of the eaves in like that. And then I'll use this half gabled roof. And I will rotate it. And I will adjust it so it's one tile this way. And then I will start adjusting the height. And I also bring this top part in. That way it meets up more seamlessly, but I can join it with the top part of the roof. And so if you're doing like a more barn style roof, having it slanted like this is how you can get that kind of a look. But if you want it to be like straight, if you do it so that like both the first and second floor nearly the same shape, you'll have to bring it up quite far in order to get it to look like straight. So sometimes that doesn't always look good. And it also depends on what kind of house you're doing. But if I want it to have like this tall, sometimes I'll have to adjust the length of the roof and then just slide it back down to where I want it. Like this. So if I want to use like this shape, sometimes I just figure out how wide it needs to be in order to do it so it's not so tall on the top, and then I just adjust the bottom. If you're doing these kind of roofing tricks, it's easier to just do the roofing first before you add any other shapes onto it or the floor plan. That way you don't have to move anything around. And then once you've figured out kind of the shape you want and you've adjusted the way you like it, instead of like redoing it all over again, I just use the copy tool and I rotate it and I match it up like that so that it's even on both sides. And then if you're doing this for a house where you want kind of like a dormer to stick out, so say I did something like this where I put a room on the side like that, I would use the roofing in sections like this. So since that part was cutting in, I just moved it, and then I'll just copy it here and I'll move the roofing in here so it's not cutting in the room, and then I'll move this out so it matches up. But that way I can get it so that this is, you know, untouched by the roof. That way when you look inside, you're not having any parts of the roof sticking in, so that helps with gameplay. And then for this, I can just use, sometimes I like to copy the shape of the peak roof just so if I put it some kind of weird shape on it, it matches the rest of the build. But something like this, you can just copy it and use that. You can also use like one of these or one of these or even one of these and just flatten it. Doesn't matter, but like that. And that's how I do that. So say you want to put roofing around like a wrap around porch like this. What I like to do is I like to go ahead and put the ceiling over the porch. And then the roofs I use is this half-hipped roof. It's basically got a part that's cut out here. And so for the front part, I stretch it out. For these kind of balconies, I make sure it's like super flat, and then I can just copy it to each side and adjust it. And I make sure that no part of it is sticking in, but this basically makes it look seamless. And so that way, like if you did it this way, it doesn't cut into the room. Like you could do it this way, but if you have like something interesting going on here, if you want to do that stair trick where you cut out a room so you can see down, this will pop up. Yeah. So just to show you, like if I wanted this to be there, the whole roof will stick into the room. So if you use the other way I do it, then you won't have that problem. So say you have the shape of your house down and you have a peaked roof or any kind of roof, but you want to put a skylight in it, what I like to do, one of the simpler ways to do it, there's like many different ways you can do it depending on what look you want, but what I like to do, if I want to do just like a whole band right here for both sides, I just section it off so there's one end cap here and one end cap here, and then I'll just copy one of the roofs, bring it over, and I'll just make it show no parts of each roof are sticking into each other. That way it looks more seamless. And then you can just put whatever glass you want in. That way you have like a nice big skylight. If you want to do it so that you only have like one side as a skylight, what you need to do is use these half peaked roofs, and you'll need to match up where like the slope meets with the other ones. So sometimes if it's a more like adjusted peaked roof, you will have to use like your Alt key to really adjust the height like exactly. And then you've got this big open piece here, and so I will just copy this one, that way I don't have to, you know, readjust everything like this. And so I guess I'll need these to be up at the top, but basically this can be your skylight here so that only one side is poking in. Sometimes if it's doing something like this where you can literally see into the freaking house, sometimes you can manipulate it so it doesn't do that. So I have noticed for something like this, sometimes you have to make it so it's even tiles to get it to work if you want one side to be the skylight. So then you'll make sure that the eave of this one is matching with the peak, and then you'll just copy it, and that way you can paint this to be your skylight. And then sometimes you'll have to readjust it, so the eave of this one's like really tall, but like there. Sometimes you have to fiddle with it just a little bit, but that way you can have a really nice skylight. And then another trick you can do if you want it to be just this cutout, what you can do is you already have this, right? So you copy another of these half ones, and then you'll make it so it's like one tile thick, and I'll bring the eave down all the way at the top, and I just match it to the whole length. And then to get it so that the glass isn't like peeking over top, I'll adjust it just slightly so it peeks over just slightly, and that way it covers the glass but it isn't sticking up so far, and that way you can have like this kind of a thing, which is cool. So that is all the kind of exterior tricks I can think of that I use. If you guys want to see like a tutorial on how to do like an A-frame house, because the roofing on that is a lot more difficult, and I would also need to figure it out because I have not done an A-frame house, but I know kind of how to do it. There are other people who have done tutorials on them, but if you want to see one from me, let me know. Other than that, please subscribe and like the video if you liked it, and comment any other suggestions you have down below if you want to do or see me do like other tutorial videos, or if you just have building ideas or just any concerns with building. I'll be sure to, reach out to you if you need help. But other than that, I will see you guys next week. Bye.